There's probably a chance that you remember there being a Watchmen video game around the time the movie released, but did you know there was a sequel? Well, most people don't, and I didn't, to be honest. There's probably quite a number of reasons for that, and that's what we will try to get into today by reviewing both games in this video, starting with the more unknown of the two and also the first one, Watchmen The End is Nigh, taking place before the events of Watchmen, back when masked vigilantes were still legal and Night Owl and Rorschach were sort of a team and they're voice acted by the actors who play them, which is cool, sure, but that's about it for the story. You don't get much besides the setting in the first game. It's really just an excuse to punch bad guys, and that would be fine if the core game was solid and enjoyable, but unfortunately there is not much here. There are only two, technically three types of enemies in this game, and you might see them with different skins, but they all play exactly the same. We have the normal enemies and heavy enemies, and technically normal enemies with guns. Both normal enemies and heavy enemies being able to wield weapons, but those weapons don't really add any variety. They all feel almost the same, the only differentiating factor between them being their marginal damage differences and their durability, since Rorschach can grab and steal these weapons for his own use. No, he cannot use guns though. The combat obviously very inspired by the Batman Arkham games that were very popular at the time, but here it feels half-baked. While there is an alright amount of moves you can pull off, you only get a decent amount of them by the end of the game, and I don't see people wanting to replay this one. But even if they did already have a full set of combos at the beginning of the game, it still wouldn't feel particularly good. Attacks don't connect well between each other or with the enemy. It's almost like you're throwing fake punches at them. The same extends to the dodging, which, by the way, only Rorschach can do, which has a tendency to lock on to a random enemy. The same happens with the overly long special attacks that are happening all the time. When you're fighting a large group of enemies, it's like the game system just gets confused. This wouldn't be such a big problem if doing special attacks didn't set you on a long wind-up animation where Rorschach runs towards the enemy, sometimes leading to oddly funny results. But like I alluded to, Rorschach and Night Owl have different movesets. Rorschach being the more mobile of the two, he can dodge attacks and grab weapons. His gameplay revolves mostly around getting behind enemies as they try to block you and using their weapons against them. He also has a rage mode that makes him invincible, faster, and makes him deal more damage, while Night Owl parries, and his special ability is an electricity power that works as a projectile when you activate his ability. This ability also raising Night Owl's attack. And that's cool on a conceptual level. Rorschach is more aggressive and deranged, so his playstyle reflects that. He attacks first, and Night Owl being more calm and the guy with the gadgets, his gameplay reflects that. He lets enemies come to him. And this would be a great positive. Their gameplay represents their personalities. But, like I said before, the gameplay is riddled with problems and it's very janky. The game is co-op focused, but nothing besides opening doors ever happens that requires that the game be co-op. There is very little synergy between the two characters in combat, which probably comes again from that cool concept that the two characters have very different playing styles. Night Owl can grapple hook and Rorschach can climb up pipes. This is really just a thing that exists to separate the players for small chunks of the game. It honestly feels like a desperate attempt to add replayability to the game. Honestly, the best part of the whole game is just throwing enemies off ledges. In this about 2 hour game, maybe even less if you play in co-op, there is a single boss and he is alright. It doesn't feel good to fight him, but he does take advantage of that throwing enemies ability which I mentioned before, so I guess it's alright. But that's it, there is one boss, which I guess makes sense for the game length. As far as graphics, it's good. There are a lot of effects. Rain especially looks nice and the lighting is very moody and the main characters are well detailed, being modeled after the movie version of them. But the level design is just boring. I mean, there's a goddamn sewer level. I hope you like dirty back alleys. I get that the setting goes in line with the source material, but I wish they had been more creative with it. Now, something that is inexcusable, and I have no idea how this happened. Maybe because they didn't have time to do it, or they just didn't know how to do it. It's Rorschach's mask. It doesn't move. It's a still JPEG. It never moves. And that's really dumb. I don't know how that happened. And it's the same thing in the sequel, so I don't know. Maybe that's how bad these games were rushed. But that leads me to talk about the sequel, Watchmen, The End is Nigh, Part 2. Coming out 4 months after the original, it's hard to know why it exists. The first game was never called Part 1, so what happened? My guess is that the game was always supposed to be a single release, but due to a rushed development to coincide with the movie release, led them to splitting up the game into 2. Honestly, I'm surprised this second half wasn't scrapped after the poor reviews of the first game. I guess it must have sold well enough. But what is new in this game? Well, not much. The combat feels marginally better. I think attacks just connect a little better. It's still far off from a good combat though. In this one, at least you start out with the full set of combos unlocked. The graphics not so much look better as they look less shiny, more matte and bloomy, so which one of the two looks better might come down to your personal opinion. I personally like the wetness and kinda shiny look of the first one better. Now, somehow this game has less enemies. There are only 2, the same from the first game, and now the heavy enemies show up a lot less. I just don't really know why a lot of these choices were made. There just don't seem to be obvious or logical reasons for them, besides again the game being rushed. The level design on paper is better. We have nightclubs and crazy sex cult mansion, but you'd be surprised how dull these settings look. And the co-op element of it is now even more in existence. They don't even try to pretend anymore. For every step forward, there's a step back. So in terms of quality, it's on par with the original, but different in a way. Suddenly, it makes sense that these games were forgotten by time. Just another tie-in movie game from the late 2000s. There just isn't a redeeming feature that makes it worth playing through these games all the way through, especially the second one. The final and only boss, and I'm about to drop a spoiler for 2009's Watchmen video game, is something that would be cool in another co-op game, but not in a game that only has one boss, because it makes it feel like a total cop-out. And that is, you fight each other, and that's it. That's the final boss fight. I'm not joking. And the thing is, this game leads you on thinking you're gonna have a real boss fight. So it's really cheap. It's like they ran out of money before they could make it, which might be true, but as it stands, it's horrible and there's totally no reason for this game to be remembered. Even in co-op, I can't see you squeezing more than 30 minutes of fun out of this game. And I never thought I would say this for a $5 game. 10 if you want both, but it's really not worth the price tag. Hearing Rorschach say never compromise in this game, it's gotta be some meta level of irony that's just a bit too sad for me to handle. Maybe just read the graphic novel on this one. Anyways, don't spend your money on old tie-in movie games. It's not a good way to do it. I did it so you don't have to. Oh god, did I just quote? Whatever. Anyways, click the subscribe button to help me grow as a YouTuber, cause that's good. And